From the moment we're born, in the beginning of each of our lives, all the human beings that came before us and that will come after us, we all have the same need. We go through life adapting around, trying to get exactly this: to be seen, to be heard, to be completely accepted and loved, period. And yet, most of us don't get that. And the golden nugget here is, if we just did, if others could see us exactly for who we were, and if we could see others for exactly who they were, there would never be violence. There would only be love. And it is the very thing each and every one of us is attempting to create and get in our lives. So today, we're going to make that a little simpler. We're going to simplify how to get your needs met. Hi, I'm Dr. Guldal. Welcome to Are You Awake? Thank you once again for hanging out with me and spending time and allowing me into your homes and into your hearts. It's just really such an honor. It's not an honor I take lightly, believe me. I'm very grateful. My life has been about, my destiny has been about learning, growing, trying to do my own work, to evolve as much as I can evolve, and to help others as much as I can do that. And this forum has been a great way for me to share everything that comes through me. And those of you out there that have been listening and sending me emails and notes, thank you. Please send any thoughts, questions that you have, comments, feedback to connect@drguldal.com. One of my favorite things to do is to read some of the questions and create a podcast around what's out there, what people are looking for. That would be wonderful. And your feedback, please. Like me on Facebook, Twitter, send notes. Let's communicate. Let's stay in touch so I can hear from you as well, so I can hear your voices, see your names. It makes it that much more personal. Okay, so why are we here today? We're here today about being seen. In I think it was the 70s, there's an old rock opera by The Who called Tommy. Is it called Tommy? Pinball Wizard. Any of you old enough to know that, and anybody else that loves old rock and roll, it's pretty amazing. But the entire album CD was a rock opera, and it was centered around this character, Tommy. And the song, I'm not going to sing. I won't do that to you, I promise. See me, feel me, hear me. See me, feel me, hear me. It's what we all need. It's what we all want. Remember Family Guy? Stewie? Mommy, 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 mommy. I think everybody remembers this. Mommy, mom, 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 mommy, mommy, mom, mom. For what seemed like endless hours of mommy, until she finally says, "What?" He just looks at her and says, "Hi." Think about how each and every one of us have that little Stewie inside. How each and every one of us have that old rock opera, see me, feel me, hear me. And yet, when we look at others, including ourselves, we only see our history. There's an old Chinese proverb that goes something like, whatever we see, whatever we hear, whatever we feel, comes from the lens and the history of our lives and our ancestors. It's hard to see exactly who we are because what we experience are all of our emotions, our sensations of loss, negativity, suffering, trauma, right? We're built for survival on a physical level. The emotional survival was never part, at least until maybe recently, it didn't seem to be a part of our wiring. Not at all. So how do we do that? How do we get around that? There's, I call it failure to thrive. Not the medical, term of body weight, low suffering body weight, failure to thrive. There's another failure to thrive. There's a failure to thrive emotionally and spiritually. If you just look around your life and all the people you know, and look in the mirror, you're going to see most people, if not in yourself, definitely people that you know, you're going to see failure to thrive. But we're fascinating people. We human beings, we're just fascinating because the moment we get a little attention, even little Stewie, the moment you turn around and looked at him, the big old smile. Think about kids in the playground or kids at the pool. Mom, Marco Polo, Marco Polo. Ever notice how a child, I always have this image of the swimming pool with the kids that I was with. My kids that I helped raise, they would dive in or jump, but they'd always look at you out of the corner of their eye to see if you're watching. And they do that same dive into the pool 5, 10, 15, 20 times, always looking to see if you're watching. And we think, oh, they need attention. But it's more than that. They need to be seen like I exist. But again, what I mean when I say that we're interesting, fascinating creatures, we human beings, it's because we adapt and create all around what we don't get to find ways to get it. I often feel like we're not much different than trees that survive hundreds of years. I was always fascinated with the root system of trees. If you look at a tree, I love to go hiking, so when I'm out there and up there, I look at trees and look at the roots. Notice how they'll go anywhere, traverse anything, climb over any rock, other trees, just to get fed. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the metaphorical being fed. And these trees, if you watch these root systems, they go forever and they wind around, all in this need to not only be fed and nourished, but to be grounded. And you can't miss the metaphor here, When we get what we need, we're grounded. And when we're not getting what we need, we're not grounded. And in the energetic terms, that's where anxiety comes from. We start spinning without our roots. So we're so creative, just like those tree roots. We'll do whatever it takes to get our nourishment. Sometimes we do that in negative ways. What's the old psychology? Children will take negative reinforcement over no reinforcement any day. Well, it's not just children. And it's not just babies that have failure to thrive. We all do. We all have the potential for areas of our lives to have failure to thrive. So how do we become that tree root? Well, we are, just instinctively. But when we do that more consciously, then everything changes. We talked about in the beginning, now let me do a little sidebar here and I'll come back. Every single fairy tale, think about it, every single fairy tale has this experience of not being seen in one way or another. The big classics like Sleeping Beauty. We've got to admit, that's so out in your face you can't even miss it. She's not even alive. She's in a sleep. She's not thriving in her life until her prince sees her. Okay, well, the prince can be, it's actually ourselves. Cinderella, she's out there scrubbing floors. Nobody knows that she's really that princess deep inside of her until somebody sees her. We have all these ways in story to express that collective unconscious of the need to be seen. I want to just repeat myself for a moment. Just think. If a rapist looked into the eyes of his victim and actually saw her or him, saw the pain, you think the rape would ever occur? No way. On a smaller scale, when our friends are talking to us or our lovers or our family members, and we're like watching Family Guy or on our phone, solitaire, Facebook, Twitter, whatever has our attention in the moment, and they're talking to us and we're just nodding and not looking them in the eye. If we really just for a moment just stopped and looked and got they just needed to be heard, 10 seconds, social media would live without us. It would be amazing. But it's funny because once we get our needs met, it's not a need anymore. But when we're all out there in our creative adaptations of trying to be seen, heard, valued, accepted, then we've all created these stories and these different patterns and these behaviors that are completely habituated, in our body and our brain chemistry, our emotional being, our amygdala center, our emotional center. That's quite the tapestry there. Okay, so what do we do with that? Why am I even chatting away about all of these stories, if you will? Well, because, the science now can help us. Self-reflection, consciousness, technology. This can all help us make a big difference. In order to really see someone else, we have to see ourselves. What's the old saying? If you really going to love someone, you have to love yourself, and we've never really figured out what that means. Well, it's what it means is to be awake, to be able to see yourself. And how do we do that? Well, there's a number of ways to do that, but just pay attention. Pay attention to your automatic reflexes. Pay attention to how you quickly jerk to whatever and how that feels inside of you. And see if you can't just take a breath when somebody wants to talk to you and just look at them. Not see them for what they did a year ago that hurt your feelings, or expect you know what they're going to say. Oh my God, how about that one? How often do we roll our eyes and go, oh God, he's going to say that again, or there she goes again. And maybe we're right, and maybe we're not. Maybe it sounds the same, but there's something else in there, and we miss it. Think about that for a minute. Think about how annoyed we get. I know, God, I do. Oh my God, nothing can make me crazier than somebody not hearing me. I get so annoyed. And I watch myself, I think that's probably my Achilles heel. And maybe that's why we're having this conversation today. But just think about what we do. So here's what happens to our brain. Our brain needs oxytocin. It's the bonding chemical. We know that mostly around mothers and nursing. And when mothers are nursing, it awakens in them all kinds of physiological process. The contracting of the uterus and the weight loss and the bonding to baby and the baby bonds to mother. But we're finding now that there's more to that. That the more we're not heard, the more we're not seen, the more isolated we feel. Although maybe we've adapted and become an extrovert and can create all kinds of busy around us. There's something missing because it's not that true connection. So there's a lower hormone release, chemical release from the pituitary gland of the oxytocin chemical, which is really a peptide. And then we go around trying to create that, but we don't know that's what we're doing. So we drink too much, smoke too much, watch a lot of TV, back to the social media dig, sorry, but we're all on our phones. Like everybody has neck aches because they're always looking down, which is fine. I get it. I do it too. But are we trying to connect? Is there an oxytocin surge through friendships on social media? So far, the research is saying no. There's an oxytocin surge, however, when somebody looks us in the eye and listens, especially if their heart's open to us because we just know it. Then we make more oxytocin. We also know now, but we'll continue to learn, that children, babies that don't get enough open-hearted, full-bodied attention when we're not seen. How there's mothers always know the different cries of their babies? Well, it's not always. Some mothers, many mothers. But that's one way of being seen and heard. But from the very beginning, if we're not getting that contact, we weren't building enough oxytocin. And when that happens, there's an isolation and a loneliness that happens. And from there, we start creating, like I said earlier, we get really adaptive. So some people find they create a clown personality. Some people get obese because they're trying to fill the hole. Some people become more anxious and maybe some OCD and anorexia behaviors, bulimia behaviors, drinking, drugs, sex, food, television, any combination of all of the above or something that maybe I've missed, in an attempt to create some pseudo-oxytocin, pseudo-experiences of high dopamine, pseudo-experiences of adrenal rushes, or numbing, to not feel. But the research is saying now that those of us that have that isolated, low oxytocin kind of process run the risk of disease equal to smoking and obesity. And then we tend to isolate more, tend to have more anxiety. And again, everything has a yin and the yang. Those that isolate more have the opposite counter effect. People can never be alone. How many of you are like that? How many of you out there just can't sit by yourself, maybe more than 10 minutes? And on the other side of that coin, how many out there find that you're isolating more and more and connecting more through the digital world? I mean, look at us. But see how creative? See how creative the human experience really is. If there's not enough connection out there, I'll find it. I mean, the surge of podcasts, it's enormous. And people are reporting. I mean, I listen to them too. We're all reporting that it's a sense of connection, like we find our person. Sorry, I always think about Meredith Grey, Dr. Yang, my person. But we find our person, and that person hangs out with us, and we get to know them, and we feel heard because somehow that person is speaking to our core. Not unlike music. I can remember being a little girl and different songs, touching the soul of who we are. I think we all have those songs that we remember, and the lyrics. Those lyrics are very special. So having a person, we're always creative to do that. And if we don't have a person, if we don't find people, then like I said, we adapt all of these different behaviors. And that's an incredible resilient process. I mean, the early studies on resiliency would indicate that you could take people, adults now, that had similar, tragic backgrounds, and look at, some who became, functional adults who had expressions of joy and good life, and the others who did not become functional adults. Do you know what the only difference was? The only core difference, what became called as, the resiliency factor. What made people resilient? I love this. I tear up every time I think about it. Is being heard. Having an experience of being seen, validated, affirmed. These are all the words that we use somewhere in their life. Sometimes it's a grandparent. Sometimes it's a teacher, a babysitter, a neighbor, a sibling. But you take these children who became adults, these incredibly tragic backgrounds, abuse, violence, alcohol, drugs, whatever, and somewhere in their lives, somebody looked at them and saw within, saw potential, saw their heart, saw their being. And in that seeing, but there's another piece to that. You see, there's this reciprocity, this infinity sign, if you think about that. That child saw that they were being seen, was able to receive an expression of kindness, caring, validation. When that child received it and they were given it, it could have just been, in some of these cases, it was just once. It was a grocery store clerk, a teacher. One thing changed their lives because inside their pituitary gland, their hormones, their brain, their soul, their core got the very essence of what they needed. And from there, resiliency was built. Isn't that just beautiful? It just blows my mind. When I was a fledgling intern, little duckling, excuse me, with the two-way mirror, I had a client come in. I will never forget this woman. I think she was maybe in her late 30s, and I was young. And I remembered these resiliency studies. I just couldn't believe how exciting they were. And she's talking about her life, and it's just one tragedy after another. One beating, one being kicked down the stairs after the other. And I looked at her and I said, the fact that you're here, the fact that you sought help and you're sitting here, and you're not dead and you're not a hot mess in so many ways. Yes, you're hurting and you're depressed and you have anxiety and your gut hurts, but you're here. It tells me you're resilient. Tell me one thing in your life where you knew it could be different for you. I remember this like it was yesterday. She looked at me and her eyes just teared up in this genuine moment when you know it's just real. And she said, I was watching a television show of a family. Now, I don't remember which show it was. She said, but the kid got in trouble, did something wrong. And she's like, all I could say to myself is, oh my God, you are in so much trouble. Dad's going to kick you down the stairs, kick the living, daylights out of you. She was cussing. She said that she sat on the edge of her bed watching this TV show because the kid was sent up to his room waiting for Dad to get home from work. And the whole time she's like, I'm just sitting there knowing Dad's just going to come and just whip him down the stairs. She goes, and you know what happened? That TV dad came, sat down next to his son, put his arm around him, said, I love you, tell me what happened. She said in that moment she couldn't stop crying and knew that that's what she wanted and that's what she was going to create for herself. Think about that. That's really huge. That's a moment where the brain body, the pituitary gland awakened and the oxytocin came into her. Somewhat. She still had to go find it. She still had to find bonding and make it happen. But her first bonding was with herself. That's what happens. There are so many stories like that in my life that in the work that I've done. And I want to ask each of you, to just take a moment and just think, where were those moments in your life? And many, many, many of you that are listening maybe had more than one, maybe had a lifetime of those moments where you didn't have to act out to get, any kind of an attention, any type of way for somebody to look at you, whether it was good or bad. Anybody to see you existing in the room where you just did for a moment. So many people, when I was a doctoral student, so many of us had a similar story. Oh yeah, life was really bad, but I did really well in school and the teachers liked me and they paid attention to me and I never wanted to let them down. So we got fed that way. Think about two things right now. I'm asking you to think about two things. One is, who was the adult or the person or persons in moments when you got that, when you were seen? Because without that, you wouldn't be sitting here with me today. Then on the other side of that, what are your adaptations? What did you do that worked or didn't work, that got you in trouble or really brought good stuff to your life? And sometimes they're a combination, right? Our adaptation gives us everything we wanted, yet there's still an emptiness inside. But let's just keep it simple for a moment. What adaptations did you have? Which ones are working for you? Which ones no longer work? Maybe they got you what you needed, but now you don't need them anymore. That's going to be another show. So just take that moment and think about those things. Find the resilience within, that resilient tiger within. See how it happened. And then think, when have you done that for another? Have you? Of course you have. We all have. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Again, when did we just see somebody? Failure to thrive is from the moment we're born till the day we die, unless we find ways to keep us going. So we adapt. We're creative. We're amazing. And sometimes more resilient than others. So remember, the greatest pearl of all is that if we can find a way to be seen and see others, changes the world, changes our world for sure. So what's the best way to do that? Well, the best way to do that is to discover self. Just discover self. The ancients and the mystics and the yogis like Patanjali, Yogas Chitta Nirodha, these sutras, these messages from the ancients, the indigenous people, vision quest, was all about, still, ayahuasca in Peru, all of this is about finding a way to see our potentiality, who we are, why we're here, meditation, yoga, exercise. So if we do these things, in meditation, our pituitary gland excretes everything we need. Oxytocin balances our thyroid endocrine system, our hormonal systems. The pineal gland activates. But in that we see, because the greatest connection of all is that within ourselves, that divine being that is us. Whether we have a God-like process, a spiritual process or not, there's still that beautiful wisdom, internal beauty, that light inside that connects us to us and something greater than us. Every single one of us are here for that. To simplify, all the greatest philosophers from the beginning of time and all the mystics from the beginning of time, we're all here for the same thing. We're all here to figure it out, to be validated, find our potentiality, find that divine within, and see it in others. Every single religion says this in its own way. But we can't do it until we understand it. And I'm trying to simplify it here as best as I can. So some form of meditation, whether it's a walking meditation, a moving meditation, a breathing mindfulness meditation, it changes the brain. I remember back in the early days of psychotherapy, it was believed that the brain crystallized by the age of 5. Now we know about neuroplasticity, and the brain changes all the time. We can increase gray matter. Actually, just listening to this podcast with your full being is increasing your gray matter, because there's an energy that's coming through me that always does. And there's truth being spoken in that energy transmission that you can feel inside of you. These moments of clarity change the brain. These moments of understanding self change the brain. Seeing our adaptations. Be proud of how incredibly creative you've been. How'd you get here? How'd you stay here? And see if any of that's now getting in your way, and create new ones. So some form of self-awareness, higher consciousness, meditation, breathing, mindfulness, moving, but doing it with the intention. You have to set the stage, because our brain will do whatever we tell it. You have to set the stage. The stage is, I want to see me. I want to connect to me. I want to change my brain, increase my gray matter, balance my central nervous system, be more happy. I don't need a prescription for oxytocin. I'm going to make my own. Set that intention. It is amazing, the magic that lives inside of us. All right, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really wanted to talk about this. Now, as I sip on my coffee, let's take a moment and let's do our awareness activation exercise. Let's continue this vibration and frequency and awaken that resilient nugget inside each of us. I can feel you guys smiling with me. Okay. We've been kind of doing that all along, so we're just going to wrap it up today with some gentle breathing. Breathing in through your nose in a mindfulness way to find the inner core of your brain where all this happens. So pay attention to your nostrils, right where they meet at the bridge of your nose. Just notice it. And as you breathe in, just note which nostril is working, right or left. It doesn't matter. They change sides every 40 minutes or so. Just breathe in, into that bridge of your nose, and straight back. Straight back into your pituitary gland, which sits right in the middle of your brain, underneath all the other stuff. And a little bit behind that is your pineal gland. As you breathe through your nostrils into the bridge of your nose and back into your brain, notice you're just going to feel it expanding in there. Gently breathe out your mouth. And the intention is to find the resiliency nuggets. Feel good about them. Note that your creativity, your very core, your very potentiality of who you are, brought you all that was good and all that you want to change. Keep breathing, and remember, all that you created, you can create anything you want, because resiliency is within. And the more I get to know me, that's what you're going to say. I need to know me. I want to see me, hear me. And feel that, fill your brain, your throat, your heart starts to expand. Because just like the moment we're born and we're full of love, we are that, no matter how many kicks we've had. Our desire and our yearning is that, to be seen. And sometimes we are asleep until Prince Charming kisses us. But guess who Prince Charming is? Us. When we see ourselves, we awaken. we get more and more resiliency nuggets, and we get more and more of what we yearn for. Now feel your heart smile, your throat smile, your midbrain smile, your entire body as you take another deep breath and fill your body. On the exhale, let go of all the shame and blame and self-doubt and why do I do this and why do I do that? Now you know why. Now you know why. Feel your brain changing. Feel new pathways being laid down. You just did it. We just got to do this together. Because as I do this with you and I share this time with you, I'm different. Another deep breath. In that grateful and honoring of each of our lives. Always open your crown, open your heart. You never know what you're going to hear. Only the truth. Walk sacred. Till next time.